I'm Pam.
I'm Jay.
And we're here today in our fourth part of our series about how we know Nazis are bad. We have a nonfiction book and a fiction book. And let's start with our nonfiction book, and we're going to talk about the Blitz.
Right. The Splendid and the Bow by Erik Larson.
It's crazy. It reads like fiction.
It does. It's definitely narrative nonfiction, but the amount of research that he did and the voices that he brought in, the way he was able to tell. So, back it up. So Winston Churchill's first day as Prime Minister.
Yes. But then we also have a diary of a Nazi general who decides that he's going to come over and fly over to England and have a conversation with Winston Churchill about why the Brits should just stop being so aggressive and give up.
Well, and I think, so we know Winston Churchill. We know we've heard his voice on documentaries, but this gives an insight into all of the players around him, including his adult children.
His wife?
His wife, his daughter.
Yes.
How old was his daughter? She was like 17 or 18. I mean, his son, it gives you this daughter-in-law, the minister.
From all of these diaries that he kept. And the audiobook is phenomenal. I have, as a comms person, I have listened to speeches by Winston Churchill, and this narrator nails the voice. You would swear that it is, and then they intersperse some actual audio of speeches that he gives, like when he comes to Washington, D.C.
So it reminded me of like the mafia bombers, the way Malcolm Gladwell was able to
which we haven't talked about, but we will need to talk about that book.
But the way he was able to introduce the real heroes of the story.
Yes.
And some of the heroes weren't. They were like his daughter, his son, and his daughter-in-law. Just the way that they were able to. How do you understand these? So we have the benefit of 2020. We can look back on this and we can make statements and judgments, but whatever. But they were living this at the time.
And we know that the Brits are victorious. We know that FDR gives support. We know that the Americans joined the war. But my dad, my husband's grandfather.
But it wasn't that easy.
But
when they were living through it, and
they didn't know that when the first bombs started dropping.
No, and the bombs were dropping in densely populated areas. In Coventry, I mean, what they did to that town was just, to drop these bombs on residents, normal civilians.
And the thing that was very powerful to me is that we had these actual diaries and narratives from the Nazi perspective and how they really were like, well, we just believe that England's going to just give up. And they completely, they need to stop being so aggressive and trying to stop us.
And to get the perspective of, they thought that the French would be holding the line.
I really didn't understand the complexity of the French involvement in World War II until I read this book. And that was very powerful to me. When our friends come from France, that come from Strasbourg, I really am interested to talk to them about that.
But it gave us all of that, and it also, we were able, that rugged determination of we are going to survive, and we're going to hold our ground, and we're going to stand tall, and we're going to stand firm.
Absolutely. So this is a nonfiction book. It's brand new. It's won all kinds of awards. And then so you can come check it out. And then we have a fiction book that is based on real history, but is fiction.
Another book set in England.
Yep.
And about I guess this would...
Bletchley Park. And how they broke the Nazi codes.
Because I was just going to say, like a spy novel.
Yes.
But it is the perspective of another voice. So we talk about the voices we didn't always hear. Voices that we didn't hear. So we don't know the voices. A lot of the people that worked there were civilian women.
And they mention Churchill's trip to Bletchley Park that they talk about in this book.
So this book is a story about, I forgot the number of women, but 3 or 4 women.
Yeah, she uses 3 women, but like one of them is a compilation of several women.
Right. And they live in this boarding house.
Yep.
They work at this very top security place. They are trying to break the code
Yeah.
of what they're
And
hearing.
Alan
on
Turing,
the
for
radio.
those of you who are big Alan Turing,
No.
he is mentioned in this. He's working with them. And the men who were, including Alan Turing, who were working on creating these systems to break these codes, were also feeling very guilty that they weren't out at the front fighting.
Exactly.
But at the same time, like, they couldn't, not just because they needed them to break the codes, but if they were to be captured, they would have all the knowledge of how to break those codes. And so they were creating the actual machine that would help decipher the code so that they could break the German codes, which is how they knew where the U-boats were going to be and how they could try to help steer their pilots around where the bombings were going to come or where the bombings were going to come into England so they could give people warning. And one of the people is a debutante who was dating at the time who became Prince Philip.
Yes.
And she is a real person. There's a nonfiction
Yes.
book. I haven't read it yet, but there's a nonfiction book that she wrote. And one is a woman who is autistic, and she is their top code breaker. And then one is a compilation of working class women that were the people that did the changes on the machines and maintained the machines.
I really think that one thing that I really got from this was that what happens when people are put in extraordinary circumstances?
Yes.
Because, as we said before, there could be a hero. And they were heroes. But what they did and the judgments, and it's not just that they went and worked in this place in a tunnel, but how they worked and lived in this village. And, it was just so frustrating.
Trying to break the code.
But also the discrimination that they faced as well.
Yes. And in the whole, just the entire way that England, so for, our world, as a person who taught world history, the way that England really stepped up to fight off the Nazis.
They recognized right off that things were awful.
Yes.
And not just sort of like, maybe things will be okay. They recognized right away, this is awful.
Yes.
And if we don't stop this, it's not going to stop.
Yeah.
Not somebody else is going to stop it, or
the French are not going to hold the line.
Or these people might, no, we are going to stop this. Everything we have in us. And all of us play a part, whether you are a civilian or you're...
We talked about this in a different book, the Diamond Eye, where we said that it was a combination of Russian blood, American dollars, and British brains.
Yeah.
And this is absolutely the British brains of this.
Yeah.
And
so 2 fabulous reads.
That tells you Nazis are bad. The Splendid and the Vile by Erik Larson, and The Rose Code by Kate Quinn.